Let's talk about doing upgrades in Talos Linux and Omni. And how do you do a Kubernetes upgrade to make sure that you're stay up to date? Because sometimes that's hard. And sometimes it's very risky because you use it, hopefully. There's workloads running it, you set configuration and flags, all these things that you need to verify if they work from one version of Kubernetes to another. So let's walk through a couple different upgrades and just show you what that looks like. Here I have a single node Kubernetes cluster, quote unquote cluster. It's running the Kubernetes API services. It's running version 1.24.17 and it's on the bench behind me. So this is a standalone Talos Linux installation that's running all of the API services. I have a kube config that allows me to access it and a Talos config that also allows me to access the nodes. So we see here I have that 1.24.17 version, and how do we upgrade it? That's a Talos control command. We need to export the Talos config to make sure we can access the endpoint with our certificates. And we're gonna specify an endpoint here with the IP address. Because it's a single node, that's just our machine, but that would normally be your control plane. And so the control plane is your endpoints that allows you to get into the rest of the cluster. And I'm also going to query with a node, which is again, the single node, same IP address, but you may want to match this to different things. And then I'm going to say I want to go to version 125.3. That's just a version that's above where I'm at, which again was 124.17. So if we go ahead and push that OK button to upgrade Kubernetes, this isn't going to upgrade Talos. This is only going to upgrade Kubernetes. But you'll see here that I actually get an error, and it's not going to keep going because it does some checks here. It checks for component flags for all of your API components, this API server, config manager. It makes sure that the actual flags on the commands are valid from one version to another. Because if I move Kubernetes versions, those flags can change. The other things it checks is something like the API resources. So in this case, I have pod security policies in my cluster. I put some in there. Who knows, maybe they got there by accident, whatever it is. This is a resource that is in the cluster that was deprecated and is no longer available in 125. It actually gets removed. So it's not going to let me do the upgrade until I take care of removing those things that are going to be removed from the cluster in the later version. So things like flags and things like API resources are all checked beforehand. So if I list out those PSPs, the pod security policies, I can see here I have those two. And now I know I need to delete them. Deleted both of those, and let's try the upgrade again. And now we'll see that we made it past that check step that failed on us last time. And so it's going to pre-pull some images for that version that we defined. So we're saying, hey, please give me 125.3. And it's going to download those images, and it's going to actually flip over to the new version for us in a minute. While this is going in the terminal for me locally, again, I can scroll back over here to the machine itself, and this is just still running. I can see here that I have unhealthy state for my controller manager. Actually, let me pull this up because I don't need to be here. There, I don't actually need to be there. I can do this directly from my terminal. I don't have to have a local cluster or a local console. I can pull up the dashboard from anywhere. And so let's pull that up over here and we'll watch. Again, we're seeing the same logs that get streamed over on that node. I have these unhealthy endpoints for my controller manager and scheduler, but now my API server and kubelet are healthy. Oh, but these still show 124.17, so maybe they haven't moved yet. We can see here, I'm still watching this and getting the versions upgrading. Controller manager just made it to 125.3. There's the scheduler now is 125.3. I'll go back to my console. I can see some of them are going unhealthy as they're rotating through and being upgraded. Okay, now we see that the Kubernetes version just flipped over to 125.3. My kubelet is healthy, my API server is healthy, and over here in the logs, it was also deploying the kube proxies, things that are daemon sets typically. I automatically am gonna get those that are upgraded, and even shows me the patching on the out. Like as I'm watching this scroll through, here's my daemon sets. It is erasing that as the actual workload in the cluster. So I didn't have to change that manually. I have everything up to date here. If I look at my command output now, I see the 125.3. And everything should be ready to go on that single node. So let's do the same thing with Omni. And I have a very similar command here where I could do omnictl cluster Kubernetes upgrade pre-checks. I could just verify if I can upgrade, and then my cluster name, and then what version I'm going to. I had the same 124.17 installed, and I'm getting the same failure here on pod security policies. So I should delete those and go through the cycle again. Let's see what it looks like in the UI. Omni is a much nicer interface for some things, especially like if we're trying to do an upgrade here. Let's go into this cluster. And in this case, I'm going to upgrade the Kubernetes version through the UI, and I'm going to select that 125.3, hit upgrade. And again, we see the same sort of checks applied here, and I have that pod security policies. Let's go ahead and delete them. Deleted the policies, so now the thing that was blocking me should be gone. Click upgrade, and it's going to go ahead and go through. And here in the middle of the screen, we can see this Kubernetes upgrade going. We're going to see a lot of the similar sort of output we were getting from the command line in a nicer version. Let's also jump over to one of the nodes here and watch what it's doing. One thing you'll notice as it does the upgrades is it does it in whatever order the Kubernetes project defines should be done. And so in this case, you should be upgrading your API servers and your control plane first, and then upgrading your worker nodes. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. And this is the API server. And if I look at the console logs, I can see that it's upgrading the controller manager, and it's waiting for it to be ready. So it's still going to go through and do all of those API components just like we did for the single node environments. Omni is going to follow the same workflow, which is great. It's doing a reconfigure, and now it's running. We're still in this pending state because we still need to migrate versions, but we also will need to do the next node once that one's ready. Now, in this case, the cluster just upgraded, and I'm clicking over here on the Bootstrap manifest to see what's got applied to the cluster. And I see here that my kubeproxy has this change. The same thing I was seeing on the Talos node. This is actually showing me, hey, this is going to be changed on that manifest, something inside the cluster. And we want to apply that to make sure that it's up to date. And so for this, all I have to do is go here and click apply changes, and it's going to apply those to the cluster, make sure the daemon set for the kubeproxy is rolled out and the right version for the cluster for me automatically. So that's just a quick overview on how you can upgrade Kubernetes clusters with Talos Linux, with talosctl if on a single node or a machine that you're managing yourself, or with Omni if you're doing it with multiple clusters, multiple machines, however you want to manage it. That basically does the same thing. It's going to go through and start the recommended upgrade process, but it is going to do those pre-flight checks or pre-upgrade checks to make sure that everything is going to work after you do the upgrade, because there's nothing worse than actually doing an upgrade and then realizing, oh, that flag is gone or that resource in the cluster doesn't exist anymore. We handle that for you in talosctl or omnictl or the Omni UI. You're ready to go.